Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle Conway. I'm a veterinary nutritionist and founder of Verity Pet Nutrition, where you will find the truth in every bite. This week and this whole month, we're going to dedicate to carbohydrates. So today, we're going to talk about what carbohydrates actually do in pet diets. The core question we're going to answer here today is, are carbohydrates actually harmful in pet food? Or has the conversation been oversimplified by marketing and social media? In Red Rising, if you haven't read it yet, it's a science fiction series set in a future society organized into rigid color-based castes. Each color is told a story of why the system exists and what their place is and why it's necessary. At the top, the ruling class, the golds, maintain power by controlling narratives, who the enemy is, why they're dangerous, and what should be feared. Simplified stories keep people compliant. Complex truths are inconvenient. The core theme isn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about what happens when people realize the villain that they're taught to hate isn't the real source of harm. The system is. In Red Rising, power doesn't come from one single resource. Society runs on fuel, on logistics, infrastructure, not just brute force. Carbohydrates play a similar role in pet food. They're a reliable energy substrate, a source of fermentable fiber, a tool for metabolic efficiency. It's true that dog and cats don't have a carbohydrate requirement. Something you'll hear a lot of people say that are trying to sell you courses, trying to sell you products, trying to get you to believe in an oversimplified narrative, the same way the society is trying to dupe the system into following. However, the body has a need for glucose. Glucose supports red kidney cell function, the brain, reproduction. Fiber, which is found in carbohydrates, something else that the grifters also forget, is that carbohydrate is a huge source of nutrients, of carbohydrates, of calories, and that there's only 3 macronutrients out there: carbs, protein, and fat. And you'll hear a lot of the grifters out there vilifying an entire macronutrient category. So sure, the body can do complex things like gluconeogenesis or taking protein and breaking it down into glucose, but that's metabolically expensive. And also forgetting about fiber. Fiber feeds the microbiome, which in turn influences immunity, gut integrity, and inflammation. Removing carbs doesn't remove the need for glucose. It just shifts that burden to more energetically expensive pathways, like we mentioned, gluconeogenesis. That's not rebellion. That's metabolic inefficiency. You're not doing your body any favors, and none of the textbooks and physiology books say otherwise. Let's jump to the idea of dogs versus cats and their metabolic differences with regards to carbohydrates. Going back to Red Rising, dogs are our adaptable reds, metabolically flexible, shaped by domestication to utilize starch more effectively and more efficiently, with increased amylase activity and a gene copy number to match. Cats are more closer to the golds in that they are obligate carnivores with a higher baseline of gluconeogenesis happening in the body, or body making glucose, and they have less dietary carbohydrate tolerance. But even the golds still rely on glucose to run their empire. Cats use it constantly. They just prefer to make more internally than to get it externally. But it also doesn't mean that providing it externally is gonna gum up their metabolism or make them fat or give them any other kind of disease. Calories makes us fat. Eating too much energy makes any living being fat, not just overfeeding one particular macronutrient. All of the macronutrients supply calories. And when we talk about fat, it's actually the most energetically efficient, meaning that a gram of fat provides more calories than a gram of carbohydrates does. When we look at the different strategies, it's the same biochemical reality. And species context matters more than ideology or what someone believes. How did carbohydrates become the villain? Every revolution needs an enemy, right? In this case, it's carbohydrates and also to some degree what are called overly or processed diets. In Red Rising, complex systems get reduced to an us versus them mentality. Happens in politics. And these narratives are emotionally powerful and easy to mobilize. It's happening in politics, happens in pet foods, happens all over the place because it's a really effective manipulation tool. So let's learn it so that we don't fall prey to it. Carbohydrates became the capital stand-in for everything wrong with pet food. Ultra processing, cost cutting, poor formulation, my least favorite, filler. And if you hear anybody who uses the term filler, you can be well assured that they lack the nuance to be able to give you any sort of real advice about pet food. So just scroll on, don't listen. And instead of interrogating the formulation quality, the fiber type, the processing method, the carbohydrate type, the nutrient balance, carbs and processing type were cast as the villain. It's cleaner to blame a macronutrient or an entire feeding category than to explain manufacturing nuance or regulatory constraints. Right? Just even saying them out loud. They're not sexy. No one's going to write a book about them. They're not going to sell a product. But that's actually how your dogs and cats' bodies work. Why carb avoidance is not better nutrition. Darrow, our protagonist in Red Rising series, doesn't win by destroying infrastructure. He wins by rebuilding systems that work better. Carb avoidance follows the opposite logic. Tear it all down, call it progress. But removing carbohydrate doesn't automatically improve nutrient density, digestibility, glycemic control, or gut health. In some cases, it worsens them. Nutrition isn't about purity tests, it's about function. The goal isn't a low carbohydrate uprising. It's a diet that actually serves the animal in front of you. Zooming out, carbohydrate vilification mirrors the same mistakes the society made, confusing symbolism with substance. Biology doesn't care who wears the sigil of the rebel. It cares whether the system works. Believing in this type of thinking that carbs are bad, you're falling prey to several different logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are jumps that our brain makes to make a very complicated subject matter more simple, like carbohydrates. And unfortunately, they lead to inaccuracies. However, if we learn to spot them and learn to understand that nuance matters and complex subjects are complex for a reason, we can spot them and scroll on. The carbohydrate argument uses things like false dichotomy or either or thinking. It uses composition fallacy. This one's sneaky and it can get in there. For example, dogs and cats don't have a dietary requirement for carbohydrates, morphs into carbohydrates are unnecessary or harmful, right? Composition fallacy. So there's a little bit of truth in there, but that doesn't represent the actual truth. Appeal to nature, that's usually the one that you'll hear most often with regard to pet nutrition, is the idea that dog's a wolf or more natural or return to nature is better than anything synthetic or man-made or scientific. That's meant to overly appeal to our logical fallacies to get us to believe them so that we don't believe in the other side. Hasty generalization or highly processed formulated diets get blamed and carbohydrates take the fall. Moralization of nutrients and the strawman simplification. Carbohydrates are reduced to sugar or empty calories, ignoring fiber, resistant starches, fermentable substrates, and their role in microbiome, gut integrity, immune signaling, and metabolic regulation. Arguing against a flatter version is easier, but it's not honest. Arguing against or trying to prop any one of these arguments up as to why carbohydrates are not good for your dogs and cats is not accurate. But these logical fallacies make it easy to do and easy to fall for. So now you know. If you like this kind of information, please consider joining Unbiased Bites. That is a community that I've created to help you identify what is true and not true, Matrix style or Hunger Games style or Red Rising style, and pick a products that you want to feed for your pet based on your budget, based on your lifestyle, based on your value system. You won't find any vilifications, any goods or bads. It's just more, here's information by which to make good decisions, make decisions based on actual information and not fear. Because whenever we're making decisions on fear, we're being pushed from our prefrontal cortex or our thinking brain, the front of the part, back into our more primitive reptile brain. That's where fear pushes us. And we are unable to use that big thinking part of our brain when we're back in the fear part of our brain. So in Unbiased Bites, we will teach you more of how to spot these logical fallacies, what they are. We have something called Meet the Brand, where we invite in various pet product companies, not just pet food companies, so they can share their brand origin story, and you can decide if they've earned a spot in your pet's bowl or pet's wellness routine. We'll also be starting a journal club where we learn how to avoid things like research washing and more. Also, courses on how to read a pet food label accurately and how to choose a pet food product for your pet, what questions to be asking companies. All sorts of things, just really armed to give you information so you can make your own decisions. I'm not going to tell you what to feed. I want to give you the information so that you can decide at home. Happy feeding. I hope to see you there and hope you enjoyed it. If you found it useful, please subscribe below and come back next week. We'll keep talking about carbohydrates.